Hello all, it's Night Fear, and I have come on to wrap up the readathon I participated in, and it was called The One Readathon to Rule Them All. I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. I only read 5 books and completed 6 challenges. So, yeah. I wanted to read a single book for each one, so I wanted to complete 8 books. But one of the books that I read completed 2 of the challenges, so I don't know. But I'll go ahead and tell you guys about it as I go along. So, originally, I wanted to read Children of Blood and Bone for one of the challenges, and the book was not at my library. Well, I went ahead and requested it, and it did come in, and so I read this for the first 2 challenges, and that was the one, Read a Fantasy written by a person of color, and Read a Fantasy with a person of color main character. This book was amazing, and it was written by Tomi Adeyemi. See, the other day I did this perfect. Tomi Adeyemi. There we go. And actually, there's a picture of her right here. Isn't she pretty? So anyway, but this was written by her, and it is just, it was powerful, and it was amazing, and I was so into the book, I had to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning a couple days ago finishing it. It is about Zelly, and she, because this is her on the cover, she has white hair, and what happened is there is a king in the book, and he basically decided that all magic users were bad, and he banished magic. And I'm not going to tell you how, because it does go into that about mid to end of book. So, and right after he banished magic, he killed all of the magic users that had used magic previously, because he was afraid that they would miss magic so much that they would try to get their magic back. So there are all these children left of the magic users, and they have white hair, because that's how in this world that they tell that they're going to be magic users. And so Zelly, her mother, was killed, and that's at the very beginning of the book, so no spoiler. And so anyway, some things happened, and she ends up being on a quest to bring back magic. And she goes on this quest with her brother and somebody else, which I'm not going to say because that'll spoil, and I don't want to spoil. And it's just, it's such a good book. I mean, a couple of things I predicted, and then a couple, especially towards the end, I was so surprised that the author, that she did a couple of the things that she did. And then I did not realize that there's actually 2 more books planned after this. The next one is going to be out in March, and it's Children of something in Destiny, I think. Oh, if you look it up on Amazon, or it might even be on Goodreads. I can't remember where I saw it, but then, I mean, it shows the name of it, and I think it shows the cover too. So the next one, it's planned. It's going to be out in March of next year. So I cannot wait. I will be the first one in line. I probably won't buy it because I don't buy books full price, but I will be the first one at the library or, however, I don't know. I'll figure out a way to read it. But this is just, it was just really amazing. If you guys haven't read this yet, I highly, 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 highly recommend it. And I gave this one 5 stars. Hold on, let me see. I forgot to pull out my little thingy. Yes, I gave this one 5 stars. Yeah, this was a really good reading month so far, guys. But anyway, so that was for the first 2 challenges. Amazing book. So the next challenge was to read a fantasy under 300 pages. And I chose Ranger's Apprentice. And this is book 1. This is The Ruins of Gollin, and it's by John Flanagan. And when I was at the library the other day, I learned this was it's actually in the juvenile section, not even the young adult. It's in the juvenile section, which I guess would be considered middle grade. I don't know. I don't understand. I've talked to you guys before about that. I don't get all the genres and how everybody's categorized I would not consider this a middle grade or a juvenile. I mean, it was just amazing, and I cannot wait to get to the second book, but I have other books that I have to read before I continue with this series. But it's about Will, and Will is an orphan. And in this, it's kind of like they have castles and knights, so it's like medieval maybe kind of thing, but a little more than that because they also have monsters and things too. So he becomes a ward of this baron, and as does all children whose parents have died. And so at age 15, they each get to choose their, I can't remember what they call it, their apprenticeship. There we go. And if the guy who holds, if their master, if their craft master, maybe hopefully that's what it's called, but anyway, if they accept them, then they go into that field. And so Will is small for his age. He's very tiny, and so they have them line up by height, and Will, of course, is last. So everybody goes through, and Horace, which you kind of get a little bit of his story too through the book, but he goes to battle school, which means he's going to be a knight. And then it goes, and one of them becomes the chef's apprentice. One of them goes into like the diplomatic. One of them goes into kind of the scholar law where they'll write all the stuff. And then it's Will's turn, and Will's like, well, I want to go to battle school. And the guy's like, no, you're too small. And so then Will's like, hey, okay, fine, I want to go to, I want to do the horses. And then they're like, no. And then so they kind of leave it up in the air. Okay, and then some things happen, which I'm not going to tell you. And he ends up being the Ranger's apprentice, which is not a spoiler, obviously, because, hello, it's the title of the book. And so he learns about what the Rangers do, who the Rangers are, and then he goes on a little adventure, and it's just, it's so good. And there are monsters, and the monsters are really cool, and there's a really cool bad guy who you don't really meet him in this book, you just hear about him. Kind of like remnant of Lord of the Rings, where you hear, tales, but you don't really meet them until later books. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. But anyway, this is really good. I gave it a 5. If you like these kind of books, I definitely recommend this. But like I said, if you're looking for it in your library, that's the section it'll be in, even though I totally don't agree. Okay, so the next one, Fantasy Over 100 Pages, I did not finish this book. I started it. I did not get very far. As you can see, that's where my bookmark. But it wasn't because it wasn't good. I was trying to read all the other books, and we've discussed this before, guys. I like big books. And then I started Thunderhead, and then I stopped because I was trying to finish some of the other ones, and it was a mess. And so I didn't get this read for the readathon, but I am going to continue it, and I am going to finish this. Just, unfortunately, not in time for it to be counted for the readathon. So that's a book that I started, but it didn't, go very far. So for the fantasy standalone, I read Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Now this one, if you guys remember, last month I read The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, and I was floored. I loved it. I was just amazed. I guess I went into this one expecting that kind of similar story, and it wasn't. And so at the beginning I was kind of disappointed, but then as the book progressed, I was happy. And basically it's about a guy in the real world, and he does a good deed, and he kind of gets punished for it, kind of. But he finds himself under London, is what they call it. And people that he's known all his life, or not all his life, but, in the last few years of his adult life, they don't see him anymore. He's like it's like he's not even there. And so he has to deal with that and deal with trying to help this girl that he helped and on this quest that she's on, even though they really don't want him at first. And then all the fantastical stuff that happens and about the world, and I don't know, it's just a really good book. And it ends kind of cool because it's one of those where he thought he knew what he wanted, and then it ends up that maybe that's not quite what he wanted. So, I mean, there's a lesson in this too, but it was really, really good. And I gave it a 4. Just because, like I said, I mean, it wasn't as good as The Ocean at the End of the Lane, so I couldn't really give it a 5 too, but I definitely would recommend it. And I'm doing a TBR for another readathon after I'm done with this video and get it uploaded, and I am reading another Neil Gaiman book. So, you know, I'm gonna read him until either I find a book I just don't like and I kind of get put off by him, or I basically read everything. So if you guys have read any of him, let me know down below, and let me know what books you would recommend by him, because I don't know, he might be one of my new favorite authors. I mean, not as great as Stephen King, but, you know, up there. Okay. Oops, that one's got to go there. Okay, then for the, let's see. The next one is fantasy written by a non-English speaking author. And this is the first one that I read for this. And, hold on, I read this on my Kindle. This is the only one I read on my Kindle. This is The Last Wish by Andrzej, maybe? Sapkowski. Anyway, this is the first Witcher book. It is a series. I will be reading more. I absolutely love this book. I did not realize going into it, and I'm not, let's see, can I? No. I did not realize going into it that it is actually supposed to be a short story book. I did not, it's like, okay, it's like he's in this place and he's healing and he's telling different stories about his life. So it is kind of short stories, but it's not like it's short stories separated, if you know what I mean. It's like one chapter will be his story, and then the next chapter will be where he's in the place, like in the present where he is now, what he's doing now. And then it'll be, the next chapter will be a story, and you don't really know that you're going into the story except for that the chapter changes. Alright, and the stories are awesome too. I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters. I mean, I gave it a 5. This is going to be like the month of 5 books, I swear. And when I did the TBR for this, I was amazed because if you look at the cover, you see the dragon. There's no dragon in this one, which is kind of disappointing. But there was, I mean, there were a lot of monsters, so it wasn't disappointing, and there was a lot of action, and you learn a little bit about how he became a Witcher, and what it involves to be a Witcher, and maybe how he's a little different than other Witchers, and just a little bit about his life, and it's really good. So I will be continuing with this series. So yeah, so I'm setting myself up for a lot of series that I need to continue. Yeah, so goodie for me. Okay, the next challenge was a fantasy set in a non-European location, and I chose Cinder by Marissa Meyer. See? Series. See, guys? Series. Loved this book. Also gave this a 5. Amazing, amazing, amazing book. My daughter, my 11-year-old, she read it. She loved it. She's actually already read Scarlet, and she is, I think like 40 or 50 pages into Cress. She is just, I'm so glad I got these books because she is just reading, and I'm so excited that she's finally reading big books now, and her and I can read books together. But anyway, if you don't know, then this is part of what they call the Lunar Chronicles. So if you hear people talking about the Lunar Chronicles, this is the first book of the series that they're talking about. And Cinder is a retelling of Cinderella, and she actually is a cyborg. But it's so much more than that. It's just, it tells her story, it tells what she goes through, and there's a lot of stuff that she goes through, and it's just, oh, I don't know how to tell you without spoiling it, but it is a very good book. It is a wonderful book. If, you know, it's a wholesome book. There's no sex, there's no language, but it's an awesome story, and I just enjoyed it from beginning to end. And I actually started Scarlet, but once again, I was trying to, there's a couple other books that I need to finish. I need to finish Thunderhead. There's another book that is getting ready to, an ebook that is getting ready to expire. It's called Hunted, that I'm trying to get through so I can get through it. So, because it's borrowed, it's an ebook borrowed from the library. So, I think I just need to stop borrowing so many books at once and just borrow a couple. But my problem is I see all these books that I want, and it's like, ooh, I want to read this, and I want to read this, and I want to read, yeah. So I need to just chill. But anyway, I definitely would recommend Cinder. Let me know down below if you guys have read it and what you thought about it. So that is the ones that I read. The 5 that I actually read. Now the last challenge was fantasy with LGBTQIA plus character. I had picked out Son of a Witch by Gregory Maguire. I told you guys when I did the TBR that I had read Wicked, that I did not really care for Wicked. I didn't really like the writing style. I couldn't get into it. It took me forever to get through that book. And that was before I was doing YouTube or Goodreads or anything. I probably would have given it a 3. I started this. I was going to read it. And then I just couldn't. It was the same. I was hoping that he had kind of grown a little, or maybe it was just that story. No, I don't like the way he writes. I just don't. So I guess you'd consider this book a DNF. I'm not going to read it. I probably won't read anything else that he writes. I just don't like his writing style. So, unfortunately, and I didn't have any other books that qualified, and all the ebooks that people had recommended were out on the ebooks, so I couldn't get another book for this. So, I was very sad because I really was excited to read an LGBTQIA plus book. So, yeah, there's that. So, unfortunately, I couldn't get through it, guys. But I'm very happy. I really enjoyed this readathon. It was a lot of fun. I really love fantasy books. And, you know, I don't know. My favorite genres are horror and fantasy. But lately, it seems like I'm leaning more towards fantasy. But then I probably will start reading horror books, and then I'll just want to read horror. So, I don't know. I'm insane like that. So, but anyway, let me know down below what you think about any of these books. If you've read any of them, if you're going to be reading in any of them, if I've talked you into reading any of them. And remember to please be kind to each other. And I will see you in the next video.